Hey everyone, this is Sam Kimsey. I'm a history major at Bluefield College. The purpose of this video series is to help give history students an understanding of how to successfully and effectively take notes in history classes. Today's topic is what to listen for and write when you are in class. So, when you're listening and writing your notes, you need to find a way to show organization in your notes. You need to learn to listen for the organization in your professor's lecture. You cannot write everything equally. What I mean by this is you cannot write each item as its own standalone fact that is completely unconnected to the rest of the lecture. The professor is not delivering their lecture in this way. They are not just saying random, isolated facts. They're saying connected parts of information that you need to hear the connections and write down those connections in that organization in your own notes. Your notes need to reflect the organization that you hear from your professor. You need to find a way to connect the ideas under one main idea. So again, the main topic for the lecture may be Jamestown, but some subtopics that your professor is probably going to talk about are going to be things like the difficulties faced by the colonists, the Powhatan Indian tribes, John Smith, Pocahontas, and so on. You need to learn to hear what are those main topics and what are those subheadings so that you can identify them and write them in your notes. So when you're listening and taking notes, you cannot write only what's on the PowerPoint. This is a bare bones skeleton, and it really doesn't take much listening skill because you can just copy off the PowerPoint. One-word clues copied off a PowerPoint won't help you study for a test. You need to learn to listen for more than just what's on the PowerPoint. Well, if you're training yourself to listen, you also need to avoid the other extreme of trying to write full sentences or everything the professor says. This isn't possible. You can't write a transcription. So, what are you going to write and listen for? The trick is writing enough to remember, but also that your notes will be written fast enough to keep up in class. This is a trick, but it takes practice. So what I mean by this is you have to learn to listen for the main points and the biggest ideas or events. You can't write everything, so listen for the main points and the biggest ideas or events. And then beneath those, or along with those, you're going to listen for the details and descriptive information that are connected to those. You need to write the main points, the biggest ideas and events in a way that they stand out to you. Then you need to write the details and descriptive information in a way connected to those main ideas. A better explanation of the organization and the ways to do that is in my previous video, but today we're talking about what to listen for specifically. So, when you're listening for those main points, those biggest ideas and the headings and the subheadings, what are you listening for? There are some clues that I like to point out. Numerical words, things like first, second, third. There are three things. Any of these kinds of things, when the professor says something like this, that's a clue to you that you should write that down. If they're saying first, oh, that's a main point, write that down. And chances are they'll follow it up with second or next, another main point after that. Or if they say there are three things, that is an instant clue to you, the student, to write down the three things they're about to say, because those are probably going to be three main ideas from which you can connect further information. Also listen for verbal navigation signs. If you've taken public speaking, you know what I'm talking about. These are words like next, lastly, the main problem, the biggest issue. These kinds of clues when you're giving a speech help your audience know where you're going, help them know what are your main points and when you're transitioning points. So also, listen for topics that are large enough to be headings in the lecture. Topics like Jamestown, Joan of Arc, the American War for Independence, the Black Death, and so on. As your heading, don't write something like the Black Death killed millions of the population of Europe. Write the Black Death as your heading, and then underneath that, put the smaller information of how many people it killed and so on. You need to identify and listen for topics that are large enough to be headings, so that you can organize subheadings and sub-information underneath those. So, in summary, you cannot write just the PowerPoint. You need to learn to listen for more than just what's written on the PowerPoint. You also can't write a transcription. You can't write everything you hear. So you need to learn to listen for the organization, which are the main points, the biggest ideas and topics. You need to learn for listening for the clues like numerical words, verbal navigation signs, which are the professor's attempts to tell you, hey, this is important. Hey, these are the three things that I've identified as the main points of this lecture, something like that. Whenever you hear those clues, make sure you're writing it down because those are the most important things. Alright, thank you all for listening. Good luck in your history classes.